Hello. Looks like we are live. Maybe. No, we are. Hello. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. If you are new here, my name is Coach Kayla. I'm an online plant-based dietitian, nutrition, and run coach. And today we're going to talk about REDS, known as REDS, formerly known as the female athlete triad, and plant-based eating in sports. So that's what we're going to talk about and focus on today. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving and everyone is doing well. If you are live, let us know. Comment below live if you're live, or say hey. If you're watching this on replay, just post below #replay this episode or this video. Audio will go on the podcast, and the video will also be uploaded on YouTube. So many ways you can rewatch this video if you miss it, so that's fine as well. So do you know what REDS is? Have you heard of this before? This, as I said, this was formerly known as the female athlete triad. They changed the name because even males can have this as well. And what it is basically it is a syndrome of poor health and declining athletic performance. And what the acronym stands for is low energy availability in sport. So when we have low energy availability, it leads to poor performance. So it's important that we're adequately and consistently fueling, and that we really use these strategies in order to prevent this. Some symptoms, so you're aware of this, is fatigue, feeling tired most of the time. Fatigue can also be related to low iron status as well, which is common in athletes and those that are athletic, especially females as well. Not seeing progress in training, unable to maintain or increase lean muscle mass, injury, or having a recurring injury that does not heal. That's a symptom as well. Illness, low mood, depression, feeling irritable and unable to focus, low mood, depression, feeling irritable, low iron, as I mentioned that as well before, changes in reproductive function hormones, irregular absent menstrual cycle, maybe even a lowered sex drive, and gastrointestinal upset. These are all symptoms of REDS and low energy availability. So we want to be aware of these symptoms and know that this is what's happening, because then we can fix it, right? Then we can either prevent this or we can improve it. And the best thing to do is certainly talk to a dietitian, work with a sports dietitian if you think you have this. But you could also try to increase your intake. And what that looks like is at least 3 meals and snacks. A lot of times for those that are plant-based, it can look like more, especially if you're whole food plant-based. It can be challenging to meet those needs if you are very active. If you're training for a marathon or ultra, we need to make sure we're eating enough and fueling properly. So it's really important that we're, really eating often as we can. And another thing too is, we see this with people, sometimes this can be unintentional. Sometimes we, can just unintentionally not fuel enough and not realize we're fueling enough. Other times it could be, we may be focused on weight loss and restriction. We may be concerned of our body image, what our body looks like, our weight, and any other things, if we're, using food for control. So that kind of gets into more of, an eating disorder or disordered eating, which also can play into this in, having low energy availability. So, and that is something that you definitely want to work with a dietitian, especially one that specializes in eating disorders, to help you really, work through that and help you to improve your eating, improve your relationship with food, because that is certainly number one. And sometimes it may be recommended that we decrease our activity depending on your medical status, depending on the severity. So, as I said, at least eat 3 meals a day plus snacks, maybe even more if you're plant-based. And we also want to make sure we're including that pre-run or exercise and post-exercise recovery nutrition, which I've talked about before. You can go to my past videos on pre-run, post-run nutrition, and that's a great way to add in more calories that we need and also help fuel our body and also help for recovery. During heavy training, you may need to even eat more beyond hunger. So one thing that I hear a lot, especially with marathon trainers, marathon training is after a long run. I get back from my run and I know I've burnt like 2,000 calories, but I'm not hungry. What do I do, Kayla? So the advice I usually give is, that is where bars, shakes, smoothies are helpful. And, if you are whole food plant-based, it can be a little harder to do this. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have, a powder. Could you make your own smoothie that's as whole food plant-based as it can, but in a liquid form, just to get in those calories, because it's, you have a low appetite. So sometimes we do have to figure out how do we get those calories in. Another thing is eating whole foods that have higher energy availability or calorie content. So like our nuts, our nut butters, granola, chocolate milk isn't a great example, but maybe like a plant-based chocolate milk. Those things could be helpful, just to get in some calories, and then hoping that appetite does kind of kick in, which sometimes it is just delayed. Eating adequate carbohydrates is also really important, especially as runners. We need to be eating adequate carbohydrates. And with those that are plant-based, this is, a benefit, because most of your diet, if you are following a more whole food plant-based diet, then you will most likely be eating more carbohydrates, because fruits, vegetables, grains, those are all carbohydrate foods. So most of your diet could be even up to 80%. I try to have my athletes at least around 60%. I think regular diet is probably about 50% carbohydrates. For my athletes, I usually have more up to 60, and it could be up to 80% of total calories. Make sure we're including protein and fat sources. So, meals, snacks, I really encourage, the, plant-based proteins as much as we can. Remembering to also include fun foods as well. So we want to be including other foods. And if you're just vegan, there's lots of vegan, a lot of other vegan options, and ice cream and cookies and all those things, but we want to include those things as well. So those are also important. So those are just some tips on, what we can do, if we have low energy availability and to eat more. The easiest way is honestly having, more nuts, seeds, that sort of thing, nut butters, adding in smoothies. Those are probably the easiest things, but also just eating often, because fruits, vegetables, whole grains are going to have less energy, which is great for those that are working towards weight loss. But because also the high fiber can fill us up quickly without giving us the energy or the amount of calories that we need. So we just want to be mindful of this. If we, are having these symptoms, we just want to make sure, we're incorporating more any way we can. And sometimes we may need to be a little more lenient. You know, when it comes to sports nutrition, sometimes we just have to get in those calories, no matter what they are. And I know a lot of my followers and a lot of you know, are whole food plant-based for your health, which I think is absolutely great. I'm not saying you can't do it, but we have to really be meal planning. We have to really be adequately fueling ourselves, or you know, it may have to use, you know, more of these convenient foods, or maybe even some of these foods you may think are more processed. We may need to incorporate those, you know, somewhat, if we're not able to get to the calories or energy that we need, if it's medically necessary, right? If we're having these symptoms, and it could be, you know, could be dangerous. You know, we don't think these things could be as dangerous as they are, but not adequately fueling can be dangerous. And I just want to make sure you guys are safe and we're eating enough. So that's what I have for today. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. I am here if anybody needs any help, has any questions, or would like to work with me. Check me out. I am on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. We have Instagram. I have a TikTok. All the places. So, and you can also email me at kaylaslaterd@gmail.com if you have any questions. So thank you so much. Thanks for watching or listening, and we will see you soon. Bye. Keep running and eating plants. Bye.